For the past few weeks, we've been watching Starship Booster 19 get closer and closer to its static fire at Pad 2. SpaceX is doing the impossible. Everything is pointing in one direction. But this week something else happened that might actually be just as significant, and almost nobody is talking about it. Meanwhile, NASA's robots on Mars are waking up, and Blue Origin is trying to prove itself by reusing its first New Glenn booster, but will they make it? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. Ship 39 has finally left the building. After a long time inside Mega Bay 2, it rolled over to Massey's this week to begin its test campaign. It's sitting on the static fire stand, which SpaceX has upgraded significantly. The stand now has a new truss structure capable of testing the ship's forward and aft flaps and its lifting pins. Rather than being used only for a static fire down the road, it's been reworked to handle the full campaign, starting with cryo testing right now, with the static fire to follow once the Raptor engines are on board. I think it is time to rename it. Ship Static Fire Stand doesn't cut it anymore. One-stop ship testing shop it is. OSST. No? What do we call this now? Give me your best name suggestions in the comments. Shippy McShip Stand, maybe. And Ship 39 didn't just park there. On Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, it already performed a flood of cryo tests. No engine thrust simulation at this stage, but propellant was loaded, the vehicle was exercised, and we got our first real look at this thing in action at Massey's. And no matter how hard we looked, we didn't see the flaps move. That might just be because the movement itself is very subtle, and what's measured is just the behavior of the hull and the flexing of those flaps under cryogenic conditions. In the last episode, we looked through the external changes together. Now it is time to go inside. So what exactly are we looking at with Ship 39? Quite a bit, actually. This is the first Block 3 ship, and one of the headline changes is propellant capacity. It holds more than Block 2 despite being the same height. SpaceX got there by reshaping the forward dome compared to Block 1, freeing up more volume in the methane tank, and by dropping the aft dome on the liquid oxygen tank slightly to squeeze out additional oxidizer capacity. Same size vehicle, more propellant, that matters. On the engine side, Ship 39 will introduce Raptor 3 to the upper stage. The new engine is more powerful, significantly cleaner in its design, with a lot of components either folded into the engine itself or cut entirely. The most obvious external sign of that is the absence of the heavy engine bay shielding you'd see on every previous ship. That shielding is gone, which saves meaningful mass right at the bottom of the vehicle. And then there is something nobody has a firm answer on yet. I mentioned it briefly on the last episode. A set of pipes has been spotted running alongside the aft flaps from the engine section up toward the liquid oxygen tank. No confirmed purpose. We have theories, but I want to hear yours. Drop them in the comments, I will be reading every single one. One more thing at Massey's worth noting, the Can Crusher, now the Super Crusher, is back in action.
It's Crush Hour!
Booster 18.1 wrapped up its testing campaign, and this week new sections went on top of the cage structure. It is growing, likely to take larger test tanks in the near future. Over at the production site, Ship 40 is close to completing stacking. This week, the transfer tube installation jig rolled into Mega Bay 2 to install the propellant transfer tubes. That includes the 4 liquid methane transfer tubes, which routes methane from the methane tank down to the sea level Raptors and the 3 Raptor vacuum engines, and the liquid oxygen transfer tube, which routes liquid oxygen from the header tank to the sea level Raptors. The aft section is the last remaining item before Ship 40 completes stacking. After that, teams will work through the remaining outfitting to get the vehicle cryo-ready and into its own test campaign. The pipeline is moving. Booster 19 also appears to have received at least one grid fin this week. It happened at night, and it is difficult to confirm exactly which fin or how many have been installed so far, since SpaceX may have installed more while the Mega Bay 1 door was closed. We'll get a clear picture as more work becomes visible. And one more item from the production site. A common dome section rolled out of the Star Factory this weekend. With Booster 20 already having its common dome section, and with only one booster stackable inside Mega Bay 1 at a time, this is most likely a replacement part for Booster 18.3, the integrated hot stage ring test article that suffered the common dome failure at Massey's on January 20th. I expect Booster 18.3 to return to Messi's to complete its test campaign once that replacement is fitted. But what about Flight 12? To say that it's been a busy week at Pad 2 would be an understatement. The stabilizer on the right chopstick was removed and reinstalled. The exact reason isn't confirmed, but given how much tuning is happening across the whole pad right now, modifications or a repair are the most likely explanation. Either way, it went back on quickly, and there is a reason for that. Here's another thing that's done quickly and has a huge effect. There is a real and growing problem: endless spam emails and phone calls. Today's sponsor Incogni can help you just like it does for me. Let it make this constant nuisance stop. Ruthless data brokers sold my personal data, but those days are over now. You're not alone looking for better data protection. Half of all Americans do. Incogni can do for you what it does for me, and it is easy. Let Incogni handle your data privacy needs. Simply sign up and grant Incogni permission to track down data brokers. That's it. Incogni is now effortlessly running in the background, automatically ensuring your personal data truly remains personal. Now with Incogni's custom removal feature, if you find a website with your information, just copy the link, send it over to Incogni, and they will remove it for you. Your personal data bodyguard. Join me at incogni.com/Felix. Take control of your personal data with Incogni. Use code Felix at the link below to get 60% off an annual plan. I love this special offer. It makes a huge difference. That's incogni.com/Felix to enjoy personal privacy while supporting Y. Alright, back to Starbase and Pad 2. After the stabilizer was back on, the sticks performed movement testing, swinging from left to right, with the stabilizers cycling through their range as well. This looks like a translation and lifting test, checking that everything moves the way it should under a controlled scenario. Then there are the booster quick disconnects. The BQDs are the two humps on the launch mount that physically connect to the base of the booster before liftoff, one for liquid oxygen and one for liquid methane, delivering the thousands of tons of propellant that fill its tanks before the engines light. This week, both BQDs at Pad 2 were purged for what appears to be the first time. A pressurized gas blowout through both propellant feed lines, confirming the flow paths are completely clean and unobstructed. You don't do that as a routine maintenance. That is a readiness step. It tells you something is coming soon. For example, a Booster 19 static fire. Also spotted this week, the detonation suppression system being tested at Pad 2 multiple times over just a few days. Quick clarification on what this actually is, because it gets confused with the main water deluge system constantly. The deluge system is the massive flood of water that protects the flame trench and pad infrastructure during ignition. The DSS is something different entirely. It operates in the moments before ignition, dispersing an ultra-fine water mist into the area directly beneath the rocket to dilute and break up any combustible propellant vapors that may have accumulated there. It is a safety system, and it has to work every single time. SpaceX testing it repeatedly right now means they are calibrating and improving it ahead of the Booster 9 static fire. Getting the timing right, the coverage right, the flow rates right. Quiet, methodical work that most people never think about. Between the stabilizer's work, the BQD purge tests, and the DSS calibration, Pad 2 is being tuned right down to the last detail. Every box that gets checked here is one less variable when Booster 19 rolls out. We're getting very close. Hey, thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching and liking the video. If you're part of the 40% that hasn't subscribed yet, it would mean the world to me if you did. It's free, and it genuinely helps more people find my channel to spread the word about spaceflight. Want to make my world even easier? There's only one place you'd rather be: the Y Members Club on Patreon and right here on YouTube. Click the card or the join button right here under the video. You are the reason we keep doing this. Thank you so much, you rock. Imagine trying to drive somewhere new with no GPS, no map, no directions. And the only person who can help you is so far away that every question takes 20 minutes to get an answer. You turn the wheel, 20 minutes later someone says, maybe don't turn the wheel. That's not just frustrating. On Mars, that's reality, and it is how you lose a mission. Let's take a look at what's done to mitigate this problem. For decades, every rover we sent to the red planet has basically driven like that. Cautiously, slow, and never entirely sure where it was.
I turn now. Good luck, everybody else!
But now that is finally changing. Perseverance has just gained the ability to figure out its own position on Mars. completely by itself and with an accuracy of about 25 centimeters. That is like this much. That is roughly the width of a sheet of paper, and that tiny margin of error represents a massive shift in how we can explore up there without being up there in person. Mars looks simple from orbit. Big plains, craters, ancient rivers, but on the ground it's a maze. You'd be surprised how inhospitable it is and how easy it is to get lost up there. From their point of view, rovers don't see a smooth landscape. They see fields of sharp rocks, soft sand, slopes, and broken terrain that can trap a vehicle permanently. Basically, a ton of "don't go here" and "don't ever do that" signs all over the place.
It's a trap! It's a trap!
It's a trap! We've already learned that lesson the hard way. One rover, Spirit, drove onto what looked like solid ground and promptly sank into a hidden trap, soft soil. Engineers spent 8 months trying to free it. And they never did. It's permanently stuck. Opportunity, Spirit's twin rover, nearly ended its mission the same way, stuck almost axle deep in sand for weeks. Mars doesn't need dramatic disasters to end a billion-dollar exploration mission, it just needs one wrong turn. But why not just use GPS? Simple, because GPS is satellite-based. There is no navigation system, no positioning network, no constellation of satellites telling you where you are on Mars. Instead, older rovers used a combination of two very imperfect methods. First, they tracked their own motion by watching how rocks move beneath their wheels. This is a technique called visual odometry. Sounds great, but it really isn't. It's a bit like walking through a desert, counting your steps and hoping you never miscount. Very professional. Over time, tiny errors add up, and after a long drive, the poor rover could be off by dozens of meters.
Lost.
Second, they relied on humans back on Earth to fix their position manually.
Where are you?
Now, that sounds a lot easier than it actually is. The rover would take pictures and send them home. Engineers would then compare those images to orbital maps and then send back updated instructions. That entire cycle took at least a full day for one correction. So instead of exploring continuously, rovers had to stop, wait, confirm, and only then continue. Imagine the worst stop and go ever without a traffic jam around you. Exploration wasn't limited by speed, it was limited by certainty. Due to the communication delay of anywhere from a few minutes to nearly half an hour round trip, real-time driving is off the table anyway. By the time a remote operator could see an obstacle on his screen here on Earth, the rover would already have hit it long ago on Mars. So we can't be in the loop of decision-making here if we want meaningful speed, and that's exactly what Perseverance is doing now. Instead of waiting for instructions, Perseverance can now look for itself. But how? Here's how it works step by step. The rover pauses and takes a full 360-degree panorama using its navigation cameras. It then stitches those images together into a detailed map of the terrain around it. Almost like creating a satellite view, but from the ground. Next, onboard software compares that freshly built map to stored high-resolution orbital imagery. Now it can match landmarks, cliffs, rock patterns, slopes, surface textures. When the patterns line up, the rover knows exactly where it is. What used to take a day now takes a couple of minutes. The wild part? This wasn't even in the original plans. The computing power that makes this possible comes from hardware that suddenly became available during the mission. Suddenly available? How? There are no upgrade shops available on Mars. The rover is using a processor that was originally used to communicate with its best friend. Remember Ingenuity, the little Mars helicopter that could? After it completed its mission, engineers realized they had a powerful, unused computer sitting on the rover. One that is even faster than the radiation-hardened main system designed years earlier. So they repurposed it, giving the rover a second brain and teaching it a completely new skill. Millions of kilometers from Earth without ever touching it, that is where NASA shines. This new localization ability builds on years of increasing autonomy. Perseverance already drove itself most of the time using a system that scans the terrain in 3D, evaluates hazards, and plans safe paths forward. Earlier rovers had to stop, think, then move. Perseverance can analyze while driving. That's why it can cover more ground in a single day than previous missions managed in much longer periods. Recently, engineers even tested letting artificial intelligence help design driving routes, identifying hazards, and suggesting paths before humans reviewed and approved them. Step by step, decision by decision, control is shifting from Earth to Mars. And this really matters more than you'd think. At first glance, it might seem like a simple technical upgrade. It is not. It's a preview of how humans will one day explore Mars. Astronauts won't have the luxury of waiting 20 minutes to figure out where they are. They won't be able to call Earth every time they encounter a new obstacle. They'll need navigation systems that work instantly, locally, reliably. They'll need machines that can scout terrain, guide crews, and operate independently in an environment where help is always delayed. Robots will have to learn to handle the planet on their own. They are no longer just tools, they become intelligent problem solvers. That is the story here. We didn't build a GPS network for Mars, we taught a robot how to find its way by enabling it to understand its surroundings in real time. All this will, of course, be impossible without rockets enabling us to reach the Moon and Mars in the first place. One of them is Blue Origin's New Glenn. A few months ago, this giant rocket booster came screaming back from space, slowed itself down, and landed on a ship in the Atlantic Ocean. That alone would have been headline news a decade ago and before SpaceX's Falcon 9. It was still a monumental success, but only half the prize Blue Origin is after. Now comes the real test. Launch that exact same booster again, and that is much harder than it sounds. Blue Origin has talked about reusable rockets for years, but talk and reality are two different things, and landing it isn't the same as reusing it. That's what NG-3, New Glenn's next mission, is really about. On paper, it's launching a communications satellite for AST Space Mobile, a company building spacecraft designed to connect directly to ordinary smartphones. Yay! Cool mission, useful technology, but for Blue Origin, the satellite is almost a footnote. This launch is a full-scale experiment to answer one question. Can they take a flown booster, refurbish it quickly, and trust it to fly again, the same as SpaceX does? And they are attempting something surprisingly aggressive. When SpaceX first landed a Falcon 9 booster, they didn't rush to reuse it. They spent more than a year inspecting it, testing it, learning every possible lesson before flying it again. Blue Origin is attempting that turnaround in just a few months. That is a bold move. It raises the stakes. New Glenn operates at a different scale. This is a much larger vehicle than the Falcon 9 people are used to seeing land. It carries more payload, flies farther down range, and uses methane fuel which burns cleaner than traditional kerosene. That cleaner burn is supposed to lead to less refurbishment and faster turnaround between flights. Blue Origin is trying to copy the reusable rocket model. But until a booster actually proves it can relaunch reliably, that is just a theory, and that's why NG-3 matters. While the rocket will carry a satellite to orbit, the real payload is progress. Proof that this enormous machine can fly, come home, and do it all over again. And that's it for today. Smash the like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. Our brand new Raptor emblem design and countless others are there for you to explore. Click the card or the US or worldwide link in the description. And if you want to know how SpaceX is attempting to build a moon base and what makes it special, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Bye.